Admiral Keiko stood at the center of the massive council chamber on Nexus Prime. The dome above her head showed the swirling colors of space, and around her sat representatives from every major empire in the galaxy. She had called this emergency meeting for one reason. Something was hunting their fleets and nobody knew what it was. 3 weeks ago, the Valdorian Fifth Fleet encountered unknown vessels near the Outer Rim, Keiko said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. These ships appeared from nowhere, attacked our convoy, and vanished without a trace. 2 days later, the same thing happened to a Zephyrian trade fleet. Yesterday, it was the Corvan battle group. The representatives shifted in their seats. Fleet Admiral Torvis of the Zephyrian Empire leaned forward. "You're saying someone is attacking all of our forces?" "Not someone," Keiko replied. "Something. The ships we've encountered don't match any known technology. They phase in and out of reality like ghosts. Our sensors can barely track them, and when they attack, they hit harder than anything we've ever seen." Captain Hyun-Soo watched from his position near the chamber wall. As one of the Valdorian Empire's best tactical officers, he had been studying the reports for days. The attacks made no sense. The enemy ships seemed to know exactly where to strike and how to escape before anyone could respond. "What do these ships look like?" asked Commander Yilan of the Corvan Collective. Keiko activated a holographic display. Images of damaged space appeared in the air above them. "This is what our ships recorded before the attackers vanished. Look closely at the debris patterns and energy signatures." Hyun-Soo studied the images carefully. Something about the wreckage looked familiar, but he couldn't place it. The metal fragments had strange markings, and the energy readings were unlike anything in their databases. "The debris shows technology that's both ancient and new," Keiko continued. "Some of these metal pieces are hundreds of years old, but they've been modified with systems we don't recognize. It's as if someone took old ships and gave them impossible upgrades." Dr. Jae-min, the Empire's top xenobiologist, stood up from his seat in the science section. "Admiral, have you identified the species responsible for these attacks?" Keiko hesitated. "That's the problem, Doctor. We have. The markings on the debris, the ship designs, even the attack patterns. They all point to one species." She paused, letting the tension build in the chamber. "Humans." The chamber erupted in confused voices. Several representatives started talking at once. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as a relatively peaceful species that had joined galactic society only 50 years ago. They had one small fleet and focused mostly on trade and exploration. "That's impossible," Torvis said loudly. "The human fleet was destroyed in the First Terran War. We all know this. Their ships were completely annihilated." "Exactly," Keiko said. "That's what makes this so disturbing. The ships attacking our fleets match the design of vessels that were destroyed 50 years ago, ships that no longer exist." Lieutenant Yoon-ji, Hyun-Soo's top analyst, had been quietly studying the data on her portable display. She looked up with a troubled expression. "Captain, I've been running comparisons with our historical records. The attack patterns match documented human naval tactics from the war, but they're somehow improved. More precise, more deadly." Hyun-Soo walked over to examine her findings. "Show me." Yoon-ji projected her analysis for others to see. "Look at this engagement pattern from the Zephyrian attack. The human ships used a formation called Wolfpack 7, a tactic that was lost when their fleet command was destroyed. No living human should know this formation." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If these were human ships, and if they were using tactics from destroyed command structures, then something very strange was happening. At that moment, the chamber doors opened. Commander Bo-Ram of Earth's Diplomatic Corps entered, flanked by 2 human security officers. She wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's space service and looked confused by the sudden attention. "I apologize for being late," Bo-Ram said as she took her seat. "Earth received your emergency summons, but we're not sure why we're here. Our records show no current military operations." Keiko turned to face the human representative. "Commander, Bo-Ram, we need to discuss your ghost fleet." Bo-Ram blinked. "I'm sorry, Admiral. Our what?" "The human vessels that have been attacking shipping lanes across 3 sectors. Ships that match designs from your destroyed colonial fleet." "Admiral, I think there's been a mistake," Bo-Ram said slowly. Earth's colonial fleet was destroyed 50 years ago during the war. We only have a small defense force now and all. Our ships are accounted for. We're not attacking anyone. Hyun-Soo watched Bo-Ram's face carefully. As a tactical officer, he was trained to read people during interrogations. Either Bo-Ram was an excellent liar, or she genuinely had no idea what they were talking about. Perhaps we should review the evidence, Dr. Jamin suggested. Commander Bo-Ram, would you be willing to examine the debris we've recovered? Of course, Bo-Ram replied. If human technology is involved, Earth wants to know about it. Over the next hour, they showed Bo-Ram all the evidence. She studied the ship fragments, the energy readings, and the tactical analysis. Her confusion seemed to deepen with each piece of information. This is definitely human technology, she admitted. But it's old. These ship designs haven't been used since the war, and these modifications, she pointed at the energy readings. We don't have technology like this. These power signatures are beyond anything Earth has ever developed. So you're saying these aren't your ships? Torvus asked. They can't be, Bo-Ram said firmly. Earth doesn't have the technology to make ships phase in and out of reality. We barely have faster-than-light travel. Keiko wasn't satisfied. Then how do you explain human ships using human tactics and human technology attacking our fleets? Before Bo-Ram could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Emergency lights flashed red, and a voice echoed from the communications system. All ships to battle stations. Unknown vessels detected approaching the station. Multiple contacts appearing from nowhere. Hyun-Soo rushed to the nearest tactical display. On the screen, he could see Nexus Prime's defense fleet scrambling to respond to contacts that seemed to appear and disappear at random. There, Yoon-ji said, pointing at the display. Look at that formation. Hyun-Soo saw it immediately. The attacking ships were using Wolfpack 7 just like in the previous attacks, but this time, they were here, at the most heavily defended station in the galaxy. All representatives to secure areas, Keiko announced. This station is under attack! Through the chamber's viewing dome, they could see flashes of weapons fire in the distance. The defense fleet was engaging something, but the enemy ships kept vanishing before taking significant damage. Bo-Ram stared at the display with growing horror. Those ship signatures, they're definitely human, but how is this possible? Suddenly, the main display flickered. A new message appeared in perfect Valdorian text. We died once. Death didn't take. We remember who killed us. We remember who we protect. The message faded, and the attacking ships vanished as quickly as they had appeared. The defense fleet found itself shooting at empty space, their targets gone without explanation. In the silence that followed, Hyun-Soo realized that their problem was much bigger than anyone had imagined. They weren't dealing with rogue humans or stolen technology. They were dealing with something that claimed to have died and returned, something that remembered the war that was supposed to be over, something that wasn't finished fighting. Dr. Jamin couldn't sleep. For 3 days, he had been studying the metal fragments recovered from the ghost ship attacks, and the results made no sense. He sat in his laboratory aboard the research station, staring at readings that violated everything he knew about physics. The metal existed in 2 states at the same time. According to his instruments, the fragments were both ancient and newly forged. They showed battle damage from conflicts that had happened decades apart. Some pieces had scorch marks from weapons that were used 50 years ago, while others showed damage from battles that had occurred just last week. This is impossible, he muttered, running another scan. Matter cannot exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously. His assistant, a young Valdorian named Kalax, looked over his shoulder. Could the readings be wrong, Doctor? I've checked them 100 times. The quantum signatures are clear. These ship fragments exist in what I can only describe as a state of temporal superposition. They're simultaneously destroyed and intact, old and new, dead and alive. Jamin leaned back in his chair. As a xenobiologist, he studied how different species adapted to survive in impossible conditions. But this was beyond biology. This was beyond anything. His computer chimed with an incoming message. Captain Hyun-Soo appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. Doctor, I need your expertise. We've located someone who might have answers about the ghost fleet phenomenon. Who? Professor Minho, a human physicist. He was exiled from Earth 20 years ago for conducting dangerous experiments. My sources say he was working on temporal research during the First Terran War. Jamin gathered his data files. Where is he? Research Station Omega-7, in the neutral zone. It's a long journey, but if anyone understands what we're dealing with, it's him. 2 days later, Jamin found himself aboard Hyunsu's ship, the Eternal Glory, traveling through empty space, toward the remote research station. Lieutenant Yoon-ji had joined them, bringing her tactical analysis of the Ghost Fleet attacks. I've been studying the patterns, Yoon-ji said as they reviewed the data. The ghost ships aren't attacking randomly. There's a strategy behind their movements, but it's spread across decades. What do you mean? Hyunsu asked. Look at this. Yoon-ji displayed a galactic map showing all the known attacks. If you plot the attacks chronologically, they seem random. But if you look at the strategic value of each target, a pattern emerges. They're systematically weakening specific trade routes and military positions. Jamin studied the map. It's as if they're fighting a war that the rest of us aren't aware of, or continuing a war that was supposed to end 50 years ago, Hyunsu said quietly. Research Station Omega-7 was a small, isolated facility that specialized in dangerous scientific experiments. When they docked, they were met by Professor Min-ho, an elderly human with sad eyes and graying hair. I've been expecting someone to find me eventually, Min-ho said as he led them to his laboratory. The Ghost Fleet has been active for years, but only recently have they become bold enough to attract galactic attention. You know about them? Yoon-ji asked. I helped create them, Min-ho replied, his voice heavy with regret. During the war, Earth was losing badly. We were desperate. My team was tasked with developing a weapon that could turn the tide. He activated a holographic display showing technical diagrams that made Jamin's head spin. The equations dealt with temporal mechanics and quantum reality manipulation. We called it the temporal cascade. The theory was simple. Create a weapon that could erase enemy fleets from history itself. Not just destroy them, but make it so they had never existed. What went wrong? Hyunsu asked. Min-ho's expression darkened. Everything. When the enemy fleet came to destroy our colonial force, we activated the temporal cascade. But instead of erasing the enemy ships, it caught our own fleet in the effect. 300 human vessels and 50,000 crew members were trapped between existence and non-existence. Jamin felt a chill run down his spine. You mean they're not really dead? They're not really alive either. The temporal cascade created a state where our fleet exists outside normal space-time. They can appear in our reality when they choose, but they belong to a space between life and death. But why are they attacking galactic shipping? Yoon-ji demanded. Because from their perspective, the war never ended, Min-ho explained. Time moves differently for them. They experience events out of order. A battle they fought last week might have happened 20 years ago from our perspective. To them, they're still protecting humanity from threats. The professor led them to another room where he had been monitoring Ghost Fleet activities. The walls were covered with tracking data and communication attempts. I've been trying to contact them for years, he said. Sometimes I succeed. Their leader is Captain Soo-jin, a woman who was supposed to die when her ship was destroyed. Instead, she became something else, something eternal. As if summoned by his words, the laboratory's communication system activated. Static filled the air, and then a voice emerged. Clear, strong, and unmistakably human. Professor Min-ho, we know you're there. We know you brought guests. Everyone froze. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Soo-jin, Min-ho called out. These people want to understand. They're not enemies. Everyone who threatens humanity is an enemy, the voice replied. We died to protect Earth. Death did not release us from that duty. Hyunsu stepped forward. Captain Soo-jin, I'm Captain Hyunsu of the Valdorian Empire. We don't want to threaten humanity. We want to understand what's happening. You want to understand? Soo-jin's voice carried a strange echo, as if it came from multiple time periods at once. You destroyed our fleet. You killed 50,000 humans. Did you think death would stop us? That was 50 years ago, Yoon-ji said. The war is over. The war is never over, Soo-jin replied. As long as humans need protection, we will fight. As long as there are threats to Earth, we will be there. We are the price of your victory, an eternal reminder that some duties transcend death. The communication began to fade, but Sujin's voice came through one more time. Tell the galaxy this. We are not ghosts. We are guardians. We are not haunting you. We are protecting what we love, and we will never stop. The laboratory fell silent. Minho slumped in his chair, looking older than his years. Now you understand, he said quietly. The Ghost Fleet isn't just ships and weapons. It's 50,000 people who loved humanity, so much that they refused to let death end their service. They exist in a state of eternal duty, fighting battles across time itself. Jamin looked at his readings again, and suddenly everything made sense. The temporal superposition, the impossible, existence of destroyed ships, the strategic attacks across decades, it was all connected. They're not bound by linear time, he realized. They can attack targets in the past, present, and future simultaneously. They're fighting a four-dimensional war, which means, Hyun-Soo said grimly, that traditional military responses are useless. Against them, how do you fight an enemy that can attack you yesterday? Minho nodded. That's why I've been in exile. I created something that the galaxy wasn't ready for. An enemy that cannot be defeated because they've already lost everything. An enemy that fights not for conquest, but for love. As they prepared to leave the research station, Yoonji asked the question that was haunting all of them. Professor, is there any way to stop them? Minho looked out at the stars through the laboratory window. Stop them? I don't think that's the right question, Lieutenant. The real question is, do we want to stop them? Because if humanity ever truly needs protection, if Earth ever faces real extinction, the Ghost Fleet might be the only thing standing between our species and oblivion. The thought followed them as they returned to their ship, carrying knowledge that would change how the galaxy viewed both humanity and death itself. The attacks began at exactly the same moment across 17 different sectors of the galaxy. Admiral Keiko watched in horror as reports flooded in from every major empire. Ghost ships were appearing everywhere, striking with impossible coordination. This is unprecedented, she told her command staff aboard the flagship Dominion. They're hitting military installations, trade hubs, and supply lines simultaneously across 3,000 light-years of space. Captain Hyun-Soo studied the tactical displays. Each attack followed the same pattern. Ghost ships would appear from nowhere, strike with devastating precision, and vanish before any response could be mounted. But the scale was far beyond anything they had seen before. Admiral, we're receiving a galaxy-wide transmission, reported Communications Officer Tran. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and Captain Sujin's image appeared. But this time, she looked different. Her form shifted between solid and transparent, between her living appearance and something spectral. Behind her, the bridge of her ship phased in and out of reality. People of the galaxy, Sujin began, her voice carrying across every communication, channel simultaneously. For 50 years, you have lived in peace while we fought in the shadows. You have prospered while we died again and again to protect what matters most. Admiral Keiko felt a chill as Sujin's image seemed to look directly at her through the screen. We are the dead who refuse to rest. We are the guardians who cannot abandon our posts. We have watched you grow strong on the peace our sacrifice bought, and we are content with this. But now, new threats emerge. Ancient enemies stir. And the living have forgotten that some prices must always be paid. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Within minutes, reports began arriving that changed everything. Lieutenant Yoon-ji burst onto the bridge with a data pad in her hands. Admiral, you need to see this. The Ghost Fleet isn't just attacking random targets. They're hitting specific locations that our deep space sensors have been monitoring. What kind of locations? Hyun-Soo asked. Sectors where we've detected unusual quantum signatures? Areas where space itself seems wrong? Yoon-ji displayed her findings. Look at this. Every target the Ghost Fleet has hit in the past 6 months corresponds to regions where our sensors have picked up anomalous readings. Dr. Jamin, who had returned from his mission to find Professor Minho, joined the discussion via communication link. Admiral, I think I understand what's happening. The Ghost Fleet isn't just protecting humanity. They're protecting reality itself. Explain, Keiko demanded. During my research with Professor Minho, we discovered that the temporal cascade didn't just affect human ships. It created weak points in space-time, and something has been testing those weak points, trying to break through. On the communication screen, Jae-min looked exhausted, but determined. The Ghost Fleet has been fighting a war that the rest of us didn't even know was happening. They've been stopping invasions from somewhere else. Before anyone could respond, new alarms sounded throughout the ship. Sensor Officer Yuki called out from her station. "Admiral, we have multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. They're not matching any known ship signatures." The main display shifted to show the tactical situation. Dozens of vessels were materializing around the Dominion, but these weren't ghost ships. These craft were angular, dark, and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "What are those?" Hyun-soo whispered. His question was answered when the Ghost Fleet arrived. Captain Soo-jin's ships phased into reality around the dark vessels, and space erupted into battle. But this wasn't like the hit-and-run attacks the galaxy had grown accustomed to. This was a full-scale engagement between the Ghost Fleet and something far worse. "The dark ships are trying to establish some kind of dimensional gateway," Yoon-ji reported, her voice tight with concentration. "And the Ghost Fleet is trying to stop them." Admiral Keiko realized she was witnessing something unprecedented, the Ghost Fleet fighting to protect not just humanity, but everything that existed in normal space-time. "Open a channel to the Ghost Fleet," she ordered. "Admiral, that's impossible. They don't respond to— Open the channel!" Surprisingly, Soo-jin's voice came through clearly. "Admiral Keiko, you shouldn't be here. This battle is not for the living." "Captain Soo-jin, what are those ships? What's happening?" "They are what comes after," Soo-jin replied, her voice strained as her ship engaged multiple dark vessels. "When the temporal cascade created us, it also created doorways. We have been sealing those doorways for 50 years, fighting enemies that exist between dimensions." The battle raged around them, and Keiko could see that even the Ghost Fleet was struggling. The dark ships seemed to regenerate damage and multiply when destroyed. "There are too many of them," Soo-jin continued. "We cannot hold them alone this time. The barriers between realities are weakening." Commander Bo-ram's voice suddenly joined the communication. She was aboard an Earth diplomatic vessel that had arrived in the system. "Soo-jin, this is Bo-ram. Earth authorizes full cooperation with any galactic forces willing to assist you." "Bo-ram?" Soo-jin's voice carried surprise and something that might have been joy. "You're real. You're actually here. We're all here, Soo-jin. The living and the dead, fighting together." What happened next changed the course of galactic history. Admiral Keiko made a decision that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. "All ships, engage the dark vessels. Assist the Ghost Fleet in whatever way possible." The combined fleets of multiple empires joined the battle alongside the Ghost ships. It was chaos, but it was coordinated chaos. The living crews provided heavy firepower, while the Ghost ships used their dimensional abilities to strike at weak points in the enemy formation. During the battle, Hyun-soo made a startling discovery. "Admiral, the dark ships are using technology similar to the temporal cascade. They're trying to destabilize our entire region of space-time." "If they succeed," Keiko asked, "everything we know ceases to exist," Dr. Jae-min replied from his research station. "They're not invaders. They're entropy given form. They want to unmake reality itself." The battle lasted for hours. Ships from both sides of the long Cold War fought together against an enemy that threatened existence itself. The Ghost Fleet's unique abilities proved crucial. They could phase through the dark ship's defenses and strike at their quantum cores. Finally, as the last dark vessel was destroyed, Soo-jin's image appeared on screens throughout the combined fleet. "The immediate threat is ended," she announced. "But this was only a probe. Larger forces are gathering beyond the dimensional barriers. The war we have been fighting in secret must now be fought in the open." Admiral Keiko looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They had just fought alongside enemies who had become allies against enemies they hadn't known existed. "Captain Soo-jin, what happens now?" "Now the galaxy must choose," Soo-jin replied. "Accept that the dead have their place in protecting the living, or face what comes next alone. We cannot force you to accept us, but we will continue our vigil, regardless." The Ghost Fleet began to fade from normal space, but before they vanished completely, Soo-jin's voice came through one final time. "Admiral Keiko, Captain Hyun-soo, Dr. Jaemin, Commander Bo-ram, remember what you have seen today. Remember that some duties transcend death, and some enemies threaten more than just life. We will be watching. We will be ready. As the ghost, ships disappeared, leaving only the combined fleets of the living empires. Keiko realized that everything had changed. The galaxy now knew that death was not the end of service, and that some threats required guardians who could not be killed, because they had already died. The war between dimensions had begun, and both the living and the dead would be needed to win it. Lieutenant Yoon-ji knew she was about to do something that would either save the galaxy or end her life. She sat in the small shuttlecraft, watching the coordinates approach on her navigation display. Ahead of her, space seemed to shimmer and bend, marking the location where the Ghost Fleet had agreed to meet her. "Are you certain about this, Lieutenant?" Captain Hyun-soo's voice came through the communication system. "We still don't fully understand what happens to living beings who enter Ghost Fleet space." "I'm certain, Captain," Yoon-ji replied. "If we're going to work together against the dimensional threats, someone needs to establish direct communication. The brief contacts we've had aren't enough." "Remember, you're volunteers for this mission," Admiral Keiko added from the Fleet Command ship. "If anything goes wrong, we'll extract you immediately." "Understood, Admiral." Yoon-ji took a deep breath as her shuttle crossed the threshold into Ghost Fleet territory. The moment she entered the shimmering space, everything changed. The shuttle's instruments went wild, showing readings that made no sense. According to her sensors, she was moving through space and time simultaneously. The stars outside her window appeared to shift between different configurations, as if she was seeing multiple time periods at once. Then Captain Soo-jin's flagship materialized around her shuttle. Yoon-ji found herself inside a massive hangar bay that existed in a state of constant flux. The walls shifted between pristine condition and battle damage. Equipment appeared and disappeared as if cycling through different moments in time. Captain Soo-jin was waiting for her, but seeing her in person was different from the communication transmissions. Soo-jin looked solid and real, but there was something about her that suggested she existed in more than 3 dimensions. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Watch, Lieutenant Yoon-ji," Soo-jin said with a smile that was both warm and haunting. "Few living beings have seen our ships from the inside." "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Captain," Yoon-ji replied. "We need to understand how your fleet operates if we're going to coordinate against the dimensional threats." Soo-jin led her through corridors that defied logic. They passed crew members who looked perfectly normal except for the fact that some of them appeared translucent, and others seemed to exist in multiple positions simultaneously. "You're seeing us as we really are," Soo-jin explained. "We exist across multiple moments in time. That crew member there is simultaneously preparing for a battle that happened 20 years ago and one that will happen next week." They entered the bridge, and Yoon-ji gasped. The command center was vast, with stations that seemed to extend into dimensions she couldn't fully perceive. The main display showed not just current space, but glimpses of past and future battle zones. "This is how we've been fighting the dimensional war," Soo-jin said. "We can see threats before they fully manifest in your timeline. We can respond to attacks that haven't happened yet from your perspective." "But at what cost?" Yoon-ji asked, studying the crew members around her. "What is it like to exist this way?" Soo-jin's expression grew sad. "We experience our deaths repeatedly, Lieutenant. Every time we phase into normal space, we relive the moment the temporal cascade caught us. But we also experience every moment we've spent protecting humanity and the galaxy. The pain and the purpose are inseparable." A communication officer, a young man named Woo Jin who looked no older than 20, despite having been dead for 50 years, approached them. "Captain, we're receiving reports from our scouts in the outer dimensions. The Dark Fleet is massing for another assault. This time they're targeting Earth directly." Soo-jin's face hardened. "How long do we have?" "In linear time? 3 days. But they're attacking across multiple time streams. They could arrive yesterday or next week from the living world's perspective." Yoon-ji struggled to understand. "How do you plan for something like that?" "We don't plan, Lieutenant. We simply are. We exist at every moment simultaneously, ready to defend what matters most whenever the threat arrives." Soo-jin led Yoon-ji to a special chamber deep within the ship. The room contained what appeared to be a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with energy. "This is our connection to the temporal cascade event," Sujin explained. "It's how we maintain our existence between life and death. It's also how we see across time and dimensions." "Could you return to normal existence?" Yunji asked. "Could you become truly alive again?" "We could," Sujin replied quietly. "Professor Minho has been working on theoretical solutions for decades. But if we return to linear existence, we lose our ability to fight the dimensional threats. We become vulnerable to attacks across time. So, you choose to remain this way? We choose to serve. The form that service takes is secondary." Meanwhile, back in normal space, Admiral Keiko was dealing with a crisis of a different kind. The Galactic Council was in emergency session, debating whether to officially recognize the Ghost Fleet as legitimate defenders of reality. Commander Boram stood before the assembled representatives, making humanity's case. "The Ghost Fleet has been protecting all of us for 50 years, she argued. "They've prevented dimensional incursions that would have destroyed entire star systems. They deserve recognition, not fear." "But they're dead," protested Admiral Torvus of the Zephyrian Empire. "How can we negotiate with the dead? How can we trust them?" "How can we not trust them?" Boram replied. "They've had countless opportunities to attack our worlds and fleets. Instead, they've focused entirely on threats that we didn't even know existed." Dr. Jae-min, present via hologram from his research facility, provided scientific support. "My analysis shows that the Ghost Fleet's intervention has prevented at least 12 major dimensional breaches in the past decade. Without them, we would already be facing full-scale invasion from entities that exist outside our reality." Captain Hyun-soo added his tactical perspective. "From a military standpoint, the Ghost Fleet represents our best hope against enemies that operate outside normal space-time. Their unique abilities make them irreplaceable." But the debate was interrupted by urgent alarms. The dimensional barriers around Earth were beginning to fail. Back aboard the Ghost Fleet flagship, Yunji felt the ship respond to the crisis. The entire vessel began to phase through different states of existence as Sujin and her crew prepared for battle. "Lieutenant, you need to return to your shuttle immediately," Sujin said. "We're about to engage the Dark Fleet, and living beings cannot survive the kind of dimensional combat we're about to undertake." "Wait," Yunji said. "Before I go, I need to understand something. You've all been dead for 50 years, fighting this war in secret. What keeps you going? What makes it worth the eternal struggle?" Sujin looked at her with eyes that held decades of pain and purpose. "Love, Lieutenant. Love for humanity. Love for life itself. Love for a future that our children might inherit. Death cannot destroy love. In fact, sometimes it makes love stronger." As Yunji returned to her shuttle and watched the Ghost Fleet prepare for battle, she realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. These weren't just soldiers or guardians. They were proof that some commitments transcend even death itself. The battle was about to begin, and both the living and the dead would be fighting for the right to exist. But now, for the first time, they would be fighting together, united by the understanding that some duties are truly eternal. The Ghost Fleet began to fade into the dimensions between realities, carrying with them 50 years of accumulated knowledge about enemies that threatened everything. And somewhere in that fading, Yunji heard Sujin's voice one final time. "Tell them we remember what it was like to be alive. Tell them we fight, so they never have to become what we are." The combined fleets of the galaxy approached Earth expecting to find a world under siege. Instead, they discovered something that would change their understanding of life, death, and duty forever. Admiral Keiko stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main display. The planet looked peaceful, its blue oceans and white clouds undisturbed by the dimensional war that raged around it. But as they drew closer, she began to see them, ghost ships phasing in and out of reality around the planet like guardian spirits. "It's beautiful," Lieutenant Yunji whispered from her station. After her time aboard the Ghost Fleet, she had become the bridge between the living and the dead, helping coordinate the unprecedented alliance. Captain Hyun-soo studied the tactical displays. "The Ghost Fleet has created a defensive grid around Earth that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Any dimensional breach that tries to form near the planet is immediately sealed. How many ships are there? Admiral Keiko asked. It's impossible to count, Yunji replied. They exist in quantum superposition. The same ship can be in multiple places at once, fighting battles across different time periods. Commander Boram's voice came through the communication system from her diplomatic vessel. All ships, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. But it wasn't Earth's government that contacted them. It was Captain Sujin, appearing on screens throughout the combined fleet. This time she looked different, more solid, more real, as if her proximity to Earth was strengthening her existence. Welcome to humanity's home, Sujin said, her image clear and strong. You have come to witness the final battle, but there is something you must understand first. This war was never about conquest or territory. It was about the right to exist. The fleets held position as Sujin continued her explanation. The dimensional entities that have been testing our barriers are not invaders in the traditional sense. They are entropy itself, given consciousness and purpose. They seek to return all reality to the void from which it came. They cannot be negotiated with because they do not recognize the value of existence. Dr. Jae-min, monitoring from his research station, confirmed what many had suspected. Captain Sujin is correct. The dark entities we've been fighting represent a fundamental force, the universe's tendency toward chaos and dissolution. They're not evil. They're simply the opposite of life and order. Then how do we fight them? Admiral Keiko asked. Sujin's image smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly as she had when she was alive 50 years ago. We don't fight them, Admiral. We transcend them. We become something that entropy cannot touch. Eternal purpose. The space around Earth began to shimmer as more ghost ships materialized, but these weren't just the vessels from the original human fleet. Other ships were appearing, Valdorian cruisers, Zephyrian destroyers, Corvan fighters, all bearing the same quantum signatures as the ghost fleet. Impossible, Captain Hyunsu breathed. Those are ships that were destroyed in battles throughout the dimensional war. But they're here. They're intact. Death is not the end of service, Sujin explained. Any crew that dies defending reality against dimensional threats can choose to continue their duty. We have been offering that choice to the fallen for 50 years. Lieutenant Yeonji realized what she was seeing. You're not just the human ghost, fleet anymore. You're the accumulated souls of everyone who has died fighting the dimensional war. We are the eternal vigil, Sujin confirmed. And today, we offer that choice to all of you. Before anyone could ask what she meant, space around the combined fleets erupted. But this time, it wasn't the dark entities attacking. It was something far worse. Reality itself was beginning to unravel. The dimensional barriers are collapsing, Dr. Jae-min reported in alarm. The sustained attacks have weakened the fundamental structure of space-time. If this continues, our entire region of the galaxy will cease to exist. The dark entities weren't trying to invade anymore. They were trying to accelerate the collapse, to turn the whole area into a void that matched their nature. All ships, engage the breach points, Admiral Keiko ordered. But even as she gave the command, she knew it was hopeless. How could conventional weapons fight the collapse of reality itself? That's when the Ghost Fleet revealed their true purpose. We need volunteers, Sujin announced across all communication channels. Living crews who are willing to become like us, to exist between life and death, to become eternal guardians of reality itself. What are you asking? Commander Boram demanded. We're asking you to die for something greater than life, Sujin replied simply. To sacrifice your linear existence for eternal purpose. The only way to stop reality from collapsing is to anchor it with beings who exist outside normal space-time. The silence that followed was deafening. Sujin was asking entire fleets to voluntarily become ghosts, to give up their lives to save existence itself. Captain Hyun-soo was the first to respond. If I do this, will I still be myself? You will be more yourself than you ever were while limited by linear time, Sujin promised. You will experience every moment of duty, every act of protection, every life saved across all of time simultaneously. It is not death, it is transcendence. One by one, crews began to volunteer. Not entire fleets, but significant numbers from every species represented. They understood that someone had to make the sacrifice, and they chose to be the ones. Admiral Keiko made her own choice. I volunteer as well. The Valdorian Empire will contribute to the Eternal Vigil. The transformation was unlike anything anyone had witnessed. The volunteer ships began to phase between existence and non-existence, their crews joining the ranks of the Eternal Guardians. But instead of dying, they became something more, protectors who could exist wherever and whenever reality needed, defending. Professor Min-ho, watching from his research station, transmitted the scientific explanation. The quantum field generated by willing sacrifice creates a stabilizing effect on space-time itself. The Ghost Fleet isn't just fighting entropy. They're becoming a living barrier against the collapse of reality. As the last volunteers completed their transformation, the dimensional breaches began to seal. The dark entities found themselves facing not just a fleet, but a network of guardians spread across time and space, anchoring reality itself through their collective will. Captain Sujin's image appeared one final time, but now she was accompanied by the newly transformed crews, including Admiral Keiko and Captain Hyunsu. The immediate crisis is over, Sujin announced. But our vigil is eternal. We will be here when new threats emerge. We will be here when reality needs defending. We will be here because we choose to be here. Commander Bo-Ram, now the senior, living officer in the fleet, asked the question that everyone was thinking. What happens now? How does the galaxy move forward knowing that the dead protect the living? The galaxy learns to accept a new truth, Sujin replied. That love and duty can transcend even death. That some services are so important they become eternal. That the price of existence is vigilance, and some of us are willing to pay that price forever. The Ghost Fleet began to fade from normal space, but they didn't disappear. They became part of the fabric of reality itself, woven into the quantum structure of space-time as eternal guardians. Lieutenant Yoon-ji, who had chosen to remain living to serve as a bridge between the two realms, transmitted the final report. To Earth and the Galactic Council, the dimensional war is over, but the vigil continues. The Ghost Fleet now includes representatives from every major species in the galaxy, united in eternal purpose. They ask nothing from us except that we remember their sacrifice and live lives worthy of their protection. As the living fleets returned to their homeworlds, they carried with them a new understanding. Death was not the end of service for those who chose otherwise. Love could transcend mortality. And somewhere between life and death, eternal guardians watched over reality itself, ensuring that existence would continue. The Ghost Fleet had become legend, myth, and promise all at once, proof that when everything is at stake, some people will choose to become eternal to protect what they love most. Earth continued to spin peacefully in space, protected by guardians who had transcended death itself. And in the quantum foam between realities, Captain Sujin and her ever-growing fleet of volunteers stood watch, ready to defend existence against any threat that might emerge from the void. The galaxy would sleep peacefully, knowing that the dead had chosen to remain awake forever.